Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this was a discussion Joe Corallo and I were having when we were getting ready to do this Captain America retrospective for No More Cap, which is a great run, by the way. And he reminded me, I don't know, these are the things that so much time has passed, you kind of forget that, Mark Grunwald, when he did his Cap run, it was like a 10-year run. And for whatever reason, and there are reasons behind this, I think Marvel's marketing being the big one, is that a lot of us think of Chris Claremont of having this big, long, kind of epic run on the title, and he did. It's not taking away from that. But other people were having long, epic runs at both Marvel and DC as well. There were several of them during that time period. And it's really just, it underscores the idea that if a writer is on a book for like more than 6 issues, there's some of the solicitations for June I'm reading there, and it's like, Ta-Nehisi Coates ends his epic, legendary run of 30 issues. It's like, I mean, okay, that in today's standards, that is longer, but I mean, it's one of the clearest differences between comics yesterday and today. But anyway, I'm talking to Joe, and one of the things I brought, because I'm thinking about it a lot lately, is about villains. And I have another video. I'm not sure which one will go first, so either you've already heard it or it will come in a few days. That villains have been watered down is kind of the wrong word, but just mishandled. And that's one of the biggest problems that comics have, especially superhero comics, but even non-superhero comics as well, because conflict is key, whether it's romance or sports or Western or sci-fi. You have to have some level of conflict. It's the nature of telling a story. And the conflicts have been really watered down. That's the purpose of that other video that, again, is either aired or not aired. But it led to this thought, which is simply this: who are the arch villains for characters? Now, you probably know this right off the top of your head. I mean, if I say, who's the arch nemesis of Batman? You go, oh, it's Joker. Okay, easy. If you say, who's the arch nemesis for Spider-Man? You're saying Green Goblin? Probably. If I say Cap, it's Red Skull. If I say Fantastic Four, it's Doctor Doom. If I say Aquaman, it's Black Manta or Ocean Master. If it's Wonder Woman, it's Cheetah. You can go down the line of all these characters, and you can do this exercise for yourself, and you should do it right now. Just spend a moment, think about it. The funny one is when you get to X-Men. Who today is the X-Men arch nemesis? Anyone? That one's trickier because they're all living on the island together now. So their arch nemesis is Weed Killer? No, I'm just joking. Anyway, here's the part that struck me, is when you go through all the villains and you go through their arch nemesis, you quickly realize that the arch nemesis is either there isn't one, there isn't somebody clearly defined. Like if I say Harley Quinn, if I say Deadpool, who is the arch nemesis of these characters? Not sure. But if for the ones you do know, like the Joker or the Red Skull or Doctor Doom, when were they created? And the answer is decades ago. So I think that tells a very interesting and troubling, and this is going to be one of those things that haunts my mind, is who are the arch nemesis, the villains, the kind of the big threats that heroes have that were created in the last 10 years? Are there any? There's been villains created in the last 10 years, but any major ones? How about the last 20 years? How far back do you actually have to go? All those characters I mentioned, the villains were all created at least 50 years ago. All of them. You might say, well, wait a minute, the heroes were created 50 years ago too. So, that's not a problem. Except the difference is the heroes have an ongoing comic. They've got this serialized show or book that comes out every month, and so they're the feature. They're the feature character. The villain comes in and comes out. You don't have the same villain all the time. I mean, Spider-Man Green Goblin seems to show up way more than he should, but in general, the villain can go years without seeing the villain. And the Red Skull would go We go many years before we saw him again. He'd be resurrected and cause some shenanigans and then get killed again, and then he'd disappear and he'd show up again. The villains were on again, off again. And what's bizarre is so many stories, hundreds or thousands of comics. And when was the last time we had a true epic villain character? Now you could say things like, well, there's Punchline over in Batman. I mean, maybe Punchline is there. Punchline got some attention, but is Punchline an arch nemesis of anyone? Is this going to become the arch nemesis of Harley Quinn? Is it? You start to really, as you kind of unpeel this onion, it starts to get worse and worse in that you really don't have threats and conflicts in a lot of the comics. Or if you do, they're old. They're the same ones that have been used for a long time. Now, granted, some of these characters, some of these villains have had different layers put on top of them. They've changed. There's nuances to their personalities. They've grown. But by and large, these villains have been just kind of they're using the same origin and mentality from the 60s or the 70s. It's remarkable how when you go down the list of heroes, there isn't a lot of new IP being made. There's not a lot of new things that are being done. It's kind of just rehashing the old stuff. And to make matters worse, and this is kind of the point I get into in the other video, there is a tendency, particularly in the last 10 years, to have the villains be kind of the villains outside your window. And I'm very struck, and I mentioned this elsewhere, when the Joker movie was coming out, a bunch of comic creators, a bunch of writers and editors, a bunch of them, were saying, God, we're so sick of the Joker. It's time to retire the Joker already. Can we have a conversation about how it's time to retire the Joker? Because he is a problematic character. And it's like, all right, so you're going to take the arch nemesis of Batman. Really, Batman has a huge rogues gallery, but the Joker is by far his core villain. And we're going to retire him because he's problematic. And shouldn't he be problematic? He is a villain. Like, villains should be problematic, right? We're going to retire him in favor of what? More and more comics want to dip into real life events, like let's have the heroes battle racism or bigotry or stuff like that. And heroes should be against racism and bigotry, no doubt about it. But do those make good villains? Like, should the Avengers fly into Charlottesville to attack a bunch of people with tiki torches? I mean, what does that even look like? How long would that battle take? Like, wouldn't She-Hulk just kind of mow down 2,000 people in the course of about 30 seconds and then we're done? Like, I don't get it. That's the problem. So if you're currently writing comics, you're like, we have to use real world threats. Well, the problem is those real world threats do not adapt well to real, to fake superheroes, to basically fictional areas. And on top of that, if you haven't replaced any villains and you're still reusing the villains from the 50s, you have a problem. And then on top of that, if you can't easily name the arch nemesis at all because your whole comic collection has turned people into plant people, I think you have a bigger problem. It is I mean, who's the X-Men arch nemesis right now? Maybe the X-Men. I mean, it's a cult. I know there are fans of the X-Men. I'm not bagging on you. I think villainy is a key component to a superhero comic. And conflict is a key component to any comic. You got to have conflict. You have to have that dynamic of things to push against. And if you don't have that, you just have kind of a bunch of vignettes about current life. And that is what we have. That is what you see. When you pick up a lot of the comics, it's like, and here is a snapshot of people ordering dinner and watching a movie. It's like, you're okay. But will any of these things be memorable? I don't know. Do this for yourself. Like, just go down your comics and say, who is the arch nemesis of this character? For Daredevil, this Bullseye, right? if you're doing a comic and you can't name the character, can't name the villain, I think that's bad. But if you start to notice that all the villains being named are at least 50 years old, that seems like a problem. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below. Who are these big villains? These not just for an interesting storyline, but a super villainous threat. I'm still reminded, by the way, of how Mark Miller for The Authority got so many people going after him because it's like, man, these villains are too creepy and too disturbing. I don't know how comfortable I am with that. It's like, they're villains. Yeah, they're creepy. Yeah, they're doing evil things. They're villains. What do you think? Anyway, like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.